The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Howdy, Wolfpack! We're back in the saddle for another round of horror stories. Last year was pretty intense, yet we had a great haul of excellent quality content. So let's kickstart this new season with a return to the 2000s Twilight Zone. Yeah, I know, the Gen 3 Twilight Zone saga is still very divisive. But what if I told you that we found another episode that people actually liked? Not pity-like or label as just alright, but unironically adored and praised. That's right, today's modern Twilight Zone journey is a rare good episode that even some of this reboot's detractors admitted was decent. The oddly emotional supernatural adventure, Memphis. I have honestly seen commenters and fans react positively towards this story, with little to no horrible scorn held against it whatsoever. Which is a huge shocker since, as we all know, this is the reboot version that has the least respect. Even Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone achieved more love than the Forrest Whitaker experience. Memphis is a return to form for the more grounded, wholesome, and hopeful style of the Twilight Zone's mood. A lot of the older stories featuring Rod Serling actually were about the human morality and coming-of-age type of writing, where a normal, realistic protagonist often learned a life lesson at the end, either changing for the better or suffering for their grave errors. So this Twilight Zone tale felt like the show was starting to understand what made the original so amazing, and it was definitely a nice change of pace to focus on a relatable drama, rather than the political crap and edgy fail bombs. This episode stars ER actor and the old farmer from Logan, Eric LaSalle, who also wrote and directed this episode as well. Yes, you heard that right. This Twilight Zone tale was seriously written by, directed by, and starring this one guy. I think this is the first time I've ever analyzed a product where one person had this much control over a single standalone episode of a horror anthology. Looks like we've got a personal passion project, folks. LaSalle truly wanted this to be a masterpiece, in spite of this reboot's brutal declining popularity. But can one man's dream become a reality? Is it as good as others believe? Did this guy's efforts deliver us a grand old Twilight Zone classic to inspire generations to come? Or is it just another terrible ego boost that dug this show's grave even deeper? Well, let's explore this dimension and find out. This is our wacky review on the obscure Twilight Zone misadventure, Memphis. So, our episode opens up at the doctor's office, where we meet our main protagonist, Ray Ellison. Ray is an antisocial lawyer who learns that he's dying from a cancerous tumor, and he only has 6 months left to live. Starting us out on a fun note, huh, Twilight Zone? Well, at least it's more uplifting than the Maple Street remake. Sadly, there's nothing the doctors can do to save him, since the tumor is too powerful now. They do have a new experimental procedure that could work, but Ray needs a high insurance, to which he responds,
"The fuck is insurance?"
Yep, Ray's broke. Not only is he slowly dying, but he has no insurance, no money, no friends, and no family that can even help him in his time of need. In all respect, this episode has a pretty strong tragic start. where our hero realizes that he has no one to love him like everyone else, and sees that he wasted his life, causing him to believe that there's no hope left.
Is there anyone?
No, there's no one. It's a hell of a thing, Doctor. Now that I know I'm dying, I realize I'm not leaving much of a life behind.
Dang, LaSalle, props for the harsh reality. It certainly makes this story stand out. You know it's a good sign when you care for the main character right off the bat. Naturally, he goes on a Cassie angst walk while we get Ray's stats card from Old Man Forrest.
Ray Ellison just got the kind of news all of us dread. But on the worst day of his life, Ray Ellison's luck is about to change. He's going to have a chance to save his future by altering the past.
No, of course he doesn't die from that. Instead, he suffers from what everyone does when they're hit by a car. He travels back in time. Wait, what? A car crashes into him and that somehow sends him back into the past? Huh?
See, that's the thing about time travel, Barry. The more you do it, the less the rules apply to you.
So, yeah, he's sent back to the 1960s, where he's saved by a nurse played by Vivica A. Fox.
Say what?
Nope, your eyes aren't stroking out on you. This is acting giant Vivica A. Fox, playing a sexy single nurse on the Twilight Zone. Clearly taking a page out of the Bruce Willis book of starring on low-budget horror stories before rising to fame. Miss Fox is, of course, playing a sassy but friendly go-getter girl who takes a liking to our main character. She's just so perfect. Yeah, she's great. She and her son help Ray out by taking him back home to treat his injuries, rather than going to a hospital. Okay, I know the 60s was back when civil rights was still in the middle of that whole equality growth thing, but is there really no other way they can aid him? They couldn't call the Color Hospital for a ride?
Nope, because the plot says so.
We get a Back to the Future reference where Ray assumes it was all just a dream, only to see, surprise, it wasn't a dream, and he really is back in time.
From the cats who brought you Caddy Black, Black Draft, and Black Kramer vs. Kramer comes a funky flick so bad you're gonna say, damn, that's funky. Black to the Future.
Oh, you out of time, baby!
And this is pretty much a whopping 80% of the plot. Ray bonds with Nurse Fox and her adorable little scamp Lucas while he recovers from the car accident. He does naturally question what's going on here, but he begins to grasp the fact that he truly is trapped in the past. I do love that this episode doesn't waste time with the main character trying to deny his predicament, or do all the fish out of water cliches. It gets to the point and epicenter of the plot almost instantly. This tale is mainly about Ray, a man who thinks he is nobody who matters and has nothing to lose, forming an unlikely bond with this lower-class black family, in a time where equal rights inspired people to have faith that the world can change for the better. And it's actually kind of sweet. The episode does have some issues, but I'll admit, I do really like this overall. The tone feels super wholesome and endearing, to the point where the most lackluster Twilight Zone reboot here actually feels like a different show entirely. I mean that in a good way. It almost feels like you are becoming absorbed into this family too. Ray and the family's slow burn fire-forged friendship is just so adorable, and the characters feel like real people. You truly care about them, since they're likable lost souls trying to fight for a better tomorrow. I think it's the best part of the whole story, since it's all heartwarming, touching moments from here on out. This is all a part of Ray's character arc. He starts off this tale as a loser who thinks nobody is going to miss him because he assumes his life was ultimately worthless. But he gains a found family here who will rock his worldview.
Whoa!
It's nice stuff, but we'll get to some of the cons later. For now, Ray clicks well with Vivica and Son. He bonds with the family, they share their life stories, he adjusts to the timeline, and we get cute banter between our lovable cast of snark knights.
Mama's a nice lady.
Yeah, pretty too.
You are all weirdos. Ugh.
We do also get some backstory unlocked from Ray, where he reveals that he's a lawyer, and he impresses the mother-son duo with his college education.
Whoa!
I know it seems small, but being an educated black man in the South was a big deal, folks. In typical Twilight Zone fashion, Ray was a nobody back in our world, but in the past, he is greater now than he ever was before. Why, he even uses his lawyer powers to save the family's home from bankruptcy, earning their love and everlasting respect. Vivica A. Fox is essentially a classic tsundere towards our hero. She's a bit cold to him at first, but of course, Eric LaSalle's smooth charm eventually wins her over, defrosting her icy heart. Hey, did I mention that this was written by the same guy starring in this episode? You can hardly tell, right? I see Eric LaSalle has taken inspiration from the great Bill Shatner.
And when I directed Star Trek V, I got a magnificent performance out of me because I respected me so much.
While the scenes between Ray and Nurse Fox are a basic romance, the moments where he's bonding with the kid Lucas are much, much cuter. Lucas is a snarky goofball who has been acting up after losing his father in a tragic accident. But the great Ray soon fills that void in his broken heart. He comes around to idolizing Ray, since he's impressed by how smart and confident Ray is, thanks to our hero's future knowledge, to the point where they grow attached and form a Lee-Clementine relationship along the way. It's a tad cheesy, but again, I enjoy it so much since Lucas and Ray are fleshed out enough to form into realistic people, making it meaningful. Lucas is an actual kid who has problems, but isn't too annoying like most bad kid characters are in these plots. Ray also has a strong story arc where he's trying to find a reason to live, and unlike most characters back in the early 2000s work, he never angsts for half his screen time and grows out of his fears of dying, since this nice family grants him a reason to go on, thanks to their sheer kindness. It's just so wholesome and shows nearly deep ideas. Oh no, guys. I think I'm beginning to like this episode. It's actually entertaining me. Alas, Ray says he still has to go back to his timeline because he doesn't belong here. Why? Why do you feel that you need to return back to the future? What's the point? This is honestly one of the few criticisms I did have against the story. I know this is going to sound dickish, but if Ray is still dying, why even bother going back to his own time? The doctor said that he only has 6 months to live before he falls. He has no money, no friends, no family, and no chance to obtain his expensive surgery. He's still going to die alone in his present day. But here in the 60s, he has everything he ever wanted. He's an educated black man in the height of civil rights. He's a lawyer, he's capable of saving his host's home, and he has a family who loves him. Sure, he's still going to die, but wouldn't you rather live the rest of your days surrounded in a world where you're cherished by people who love you? This family has given him every reason to stay, and he cares for them. Yet he still wants to go back to his lonely, sad waste? Why? I mean, if Vivica A. Fox was my girlfriend, I'd never want to leave her. Plus, her son loves him and looks up to him. They've welcomed him in easily. He has no reason to abandon them. However, we're supposed to root for him finding his Sliders portal back to our present. Wouldn't it have been more interesting if the show gave him an ultimatum? Do something like Back to the Future Part 2, where Ray would pull a Biff Tannen scheme to become rich in the future. That way, he could afford that expensive experimental surgery which could save his life back in the present. Have Ray use what little cash he has in his pockets to invest in like Microsoft, Disney, or Apple stock. You know, before they became the huge companies they are today. He'd invest in a small industry destined to become a money-making boss in his time, where if he'd return to the present, he'd be wealthy enough to afford the life-saving operation and finally make something of himself in his world. But uh-oh, he's grown attached to this past family, who truly love him and provide him happiness. Now, he's unsure if he ever wants to go back home, even though he will certainly die if he stays here. You see, writers, this is what we call conflict, which this episode seems to be lacking in. Our lovable protagonist must make a choice that will have both great pros and some devastating consequences. That would have made this story 1,000 times more intense and lead to our main character making a decision that even the audience could have been split on. But they don't do that. It's just, oh, Ray doesn't belong in this time, so he has to go without reconsidering how it'll affect Nurse Fox and Son. I find it kind of disappointing since the story gives Ray every reason to remain here and not go back to his world, yet the narrative wants us to hope he goes back home despite all his touching scenes with the past characters. Twilight Zone, you could do better. It's not like a story-destroying problem, but it is better than resorting to lazy writing. Speaking of which, Ray tries time traveling again by jumping in front of a moving car. I see we're following Family Guy logic on this one.
All right, past, here I come. Wow, everybody in 1955 was on fire. I never knew that.
But it fails, since cell phones weren't around yet to cause bad driving. We then get this really weird scene where Ray encounters what I think is a racist cop, but it's too awkward to tell.
This is public property, isn't it?
Are you questioning me, boy?
What did you call me?
Boy? Now you're bullying me?
I'll get to the point quickly. I don't get what purpose this scene serves for the rest of the plot. He looks for his wallet in the alley he was found in, finds nada, the cop sort of acts sketchy towards him for no real reason, and we get a rather pointless racist scene that doesn't matter or mean anything at all. The cop seems like he's going to be an antagonist or something, but guess what? He never comes back. We don't ever see this guy again, and the racist police concept is never followed up on. It just exists and drags out the episode. It's not like the show even says anything about racism in this episode. The story is about a different theme entirely, but this is just here. I guess the writer remembered the last time the Twilight Zone discussed racism and cut his losses. But it's still weird. Maybe it was just to show us the bad side of Memphis.
Son, what's the bad part of Memphis called?
Memphis?
Yeah, that's where we're headed.
Don't worry, Lucas shows up and saves Ray just in time. He says Ray's his visiting uncle, and the racist cop just lets it slide, I guess, making me question this even more. But who cares?
Tell your uncle. He's in Memphis now, yeah?
Yes, sir.
What, are you going to kiss him? Why are you gazing into each other's eyes for so long?
I would so do him.
And the guys leave, while this scene is never brought up ever again. Thankfully, we're back to the good bonding scenes. But this one is what I consider the best one of them all. Lucas finally opens up to Ray and shares a heart-to-heart with him, while our hero mentors the boy in understanding how you should cherish your core values and discover who you are, above what you can do to change your path when you don't know what it is yet. He tells Lucas that a real man uses his brains to get by in life, not force. You can't get by on brawn or forcing your way onto others. You can achieve great things through hard work and faith in yourself. Ray used to believe that he was changing the lives of others, but he realized that he never changed the one life that mattered the most in all that time: himself.
All around me are familiar faces.
Lucas becomes a true believer in the great Eric LaSalle's sage wisdom and shares his dreams with his father figure.
Mom always telling me not to fight, but she just don't understand.
Can't be a man without fighting.
See, that's what I told her.
Yeah, but the secret is a real man doesn't use his fists to fight. Look, you fight with these, you can change things maybe for a few minutes, but you use this and this, change things forever. You can change your life.
I know a ton of folks love Walking Distance more, but I really love this moment a whole lot since it solidifies the trust between the characters, and it's so wholesome that I can't help but grin at the cuteness overload.
Want no secret?
What kind of secret?
I want to be when I grow up.
Okay.
You gotta promise me you won't lie.
Okay, I promise. It's a pretty big dream.
I know.
You ready to fight for it?
Yes, sir.
Aw, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Isn't that sweet?
The computer is suffering from cuteness overload.
Speaking of sweet, Nurse Vivica finally falls in love with the great LaSalle and welcomes him to stay in their humble abode with open arms, as thanks for saving their house. Yep, Nurse Fox wants to start a new life together with him in their fam, but Ray, for some reason, still wants to go back home to his time. Why? Dude, Vivica A. Fox wants to sleep with you. Take the greatest gift of all gifts. Again, he has no reason to go back, but has every reason to stay here. Yet the show keeps pushing for him to go home to the present.
Because he doesn't belong here.
That's not good enough. Then, no kitten, no joke, the central conflict finally comes into play in the final act. Yeah, for reals, the writer at last introduces us to the super serial intense conflict in the final 7 minutes.
You what?
Ray gets a flyer earlier from some guy, and when he finally reads it, he realizes that he's back in the day when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. meaning that he has to save him before it happens.
Dun dun dun!
Oh, right, today's Dr. King Day. I totally forgot. I guess, just like the writers, I kept it as a small bullet point for later. Getting back on track, holy cow, is that a ton to swallow in the final few minutes? The Save Dr. King story is kind of thrown in just to make this episode feel more intense than it actually is. Why wasn't this introduced earlier? We spend 80% of this episode focused on the family bonding with Ray, only to have the last act be the true narrative, where Ray thinks that the real reason he came back in time was to prevent Dr. King's death, and change the future for the better.
Damn!
This is my second biggest gripe with the episode. The narrative structure is super poorly paced. As much as I enjoyed the heartwarming scenes, the conflict feels last minute and painfully rushed, just to make this episode feel as big as a classic Twilight Zone tale. To the show's credit, they do a decent job tying this into the major moral, but it's still not that well planned out and came across as tacked on. I still love this plot, yet this conflict is something that shouldn't have been saved for the final quarter of a 25-minute episode for a cheap final countdown turn. Not to mention, this is now our hero's final mission. Ray goes back to ignoring the family who loves him because he now thinks that this is the true reason he's here. Save Dr. King to save the world. Where he fails instantly by acting crazy and screaming Dr. King is going to die at a public rally like a maniac. Where, big shock, nobody believes him.
Well, if he's not going to do anything...
You moron. I thought you were supposed to be smart. Vivica bails him out because she's the best girlfriend ever.
Baby, you're the greatest.
But, like a dick, he says this is goodbye.
What an asshole!
I know he has to save Dr. King and all, but you're not even going to grant her a goodbye kiss. Vivica deserves better. The family still beg him to stay forever, but he says he can't because he must fight for his destiny. So he runs all the way to Dr. King's hotel on foot to prevent the sniper assassination. You know, for a guy who was smashed by a car, he sure can run fast. Also, as much as I'm mixed on the Dr. King stuff, I do give A+ credit on the Twilight Zone's reenactment here. The show did quite a masterful job at making it feel as if we were watching Dr. King in his final moments. Kudos, showrunners.
You're the greatest.
Ray almost makes it, but oh no, Lucas followed him to help, giving our hero a telltale choice over who to save, Dr. King or his surrogate son.
Go inside! Wait! Now Lucas, go back! Dr. King, go inside! No, no!
Wait!
You gotta stop him. You gotta save him. You gotta.
Ooh. Well, look on the bright side. You could still save Bobby Kennedy. Nope. So Ray cries that he failed and wasted his chance, but Lucas says no he didn't because he saved his life instead. We then get to our twist ending. Ray awakens back in the present-day hospital where the doctor says that he's A-okay since his surgery was a complete success. Yep, the car not only returned him to his timeline, but cured his cancer. All we have to do is run people over to secure perfect health care. Okay, here's what really happened. The hospital used that new surgery to save Ray's life after all, thanks to a recent new healthcare program dedicated to aiding poor patients, where Ray meets Lucas, all grown up. Yep, that was Lucas's secret dream the whole time, to be a doctor who saves lives of people from all diverse backgrounds. Lucas tells Ray that a great man once inspired him to create this new system and aid people with his knowledge, revealing that Ray changed a life after all.
I won't forget. Ray Ellison was looking for a fresh start, and he only had to go back 35 years to find one. Sometimes the key to our future lies in the past, a lesson courtesy of the Twilight Zone.
Okay, you were right. I am crying. You happy now?
And that was the grand finale of the underrated Twilight Zone gem, Memphis. And to be fair, I actually thought it was surprisingly good. I was intrigued by a lot of the inspirational ideas and wholesome emotional moments. So much that I almost forgot this was the same series which brought us so many bad episodes. Much like Tagged, this tale was clearly designed by people who cared about what they wanted to give to the world. And while it's far from perfect, it was obvious that great heart was poured into it. I'm probably going to piss off all the fans who worship this one, but I do have to talk about the negatives. It is not a flawless victory. The structure of the story is not as well built as it should be. I definitely think it got its act together just in time for that deep conclusion, but the road it took was real bumpy. So much time is focused on the heartwarming family bonding scenes, which, while good, kind of slows the story down. The saving Dr. King mission sounds like a huge deal, but the episode made a mistake of saving it for the final few minutes. And when it does arrive, it feels like the show was reminded that they needed higher stakes in order to keep our attention. It just wasn't planned out well. Also, our protagonist absolutely needed a large reason to travel back to the future, other than he just doesn't belong here. It's not like he was doing any damage to the space-time continuum or would trigger a butterfly effect. In fact, since he's dying, it seems like a slightly better way to live by spending his final days with this loving family. Again, I point to my fanfic idea, where he sets aside some money that'll grow into a fortune waiting for him in his time, as a note worth using. These were very minor issues, but I think the show could have written around them without any trouble. But, those nitpicks said, I honestly think overall, the story is fantastic. Memphis is not another pathetic attempt of this reboot giving you a high-stakes political lesson where the fate of humanity is at risk, but instead a tale about a depressed person uncovering their true worth. A person who has no reason to live and losing his faith in life is granted a second chance to see that he can be important after all. While he's not even close to the man Dr. King was in shaping history, he did matter to others who needed him and were influenced by his example. This is a touching journey informing you that just because you might never be a grand icon remembered for the ages, your life does matter, because there are some people out there who do value you. Ultimately, you are a better person than you give yourself credit for. The heartwarming scenes of Ray romancing Vivica Fox and teaching Lucas to have hope are well-acted moments showing us that this guy is a good man simply for caring about their well-being. A shocking moment in their eyes, since they live in a world where their kind struggled for equality and had to look out for themselves first. The heartwarming scenes and bonding moments were handled well enough and tie in together perfectly, since Lucas did take his mentor's words to heart, and he not only saves our hero's life in the end, but also achieved his dreams of being a great doctor. A dream which he thought was impossible because of his old environment. Considering that this was a deep idea from this reboot of all shows is quite the accomplishment of its own, and does show that G3 Twilight Zone could succeed when it wanted to entertain instead of lecture. The worst things I can say about this episode is that it can get kind of dull if you aren't into the characters, and has some weak writing at times, but overall, it is a good tale to encourage people who doubt themselves and demonstrate that one person can have a powerful impact at creating their own legacy. So, I grant the obscure short Memphis a gold skull. It has great acting, which goes without saying since Vivica Fox and Eric LaSalle do have talent. It features a nice wholesome vibe with the laid-back setting, has a few gripping emotional moments, a pretty deep character arc for Ray and Lucas, nice references for the history buffs, competent filmmaking, and best of all, an incredible moral on how you are all better than you think you are. I will warn you that it's flawed and not exactly Stand By Me excellent, but I can recommend it as a rare good episode if you love simple, wholesome Twilight Zone stories like back on the Serling days. Memphis is certainly a cozy little adventure, which proves that you don't always have to be the greatest thing in the world in order to be a memorable inspiration. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I have a dream that we can find more cool quality content like this. Take care.
Son, what's the bad part of Memphis called?
Memphis?
Yeah, that's where we headed.